Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got a good friend of the podcast, Cody Nelson from the Outdoorsman's, the Optics Authority in Phoenix. Cody, how you doing?
I'm doing real good, Jay. Glad to be on today.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have been busy down at the shop, taking care of customers and doing what you always do. That's good news.
Well, I got to tell you, I think it's been one of the best years the Outdoorsman has ever had so far. So we are holding on tight and trying to do everything we can to take care of our customers, and uh, and it's just been I can't the growth has been absolutely crazy again. It never ceases to amaze me.
That's awesome. I know the last time we talked, Swarovski was having their big sale. How has that sale been going and how have the customers responded?
The customers, the response has been overwhelming. It is still going strong. We had, there's always a little bit of a lull, right before Thanksgiving because everybody's got their mind on other things. But, yesterday and today we picked right back up and kind of left off right where we started, and it's been nothing short of awesome. So I couldn't have asked for a better time of year to put a little something together, and it still goes through December 30, excuse me, December 31st.
Yeah, sounds good. Cody,
So
a question in general. When you get calls into the shop every day, if you had to just say, and not talking manufacturer, just talking power of binocular, are most people buying 10s, most people buying 12, or let's 8s, 10s, 12s, or 15s? If you had to just say one, what would be your number one
if I
seller?
if I had to just pick one, the question that we get the most is always, and probably always has been, with the 15 power binocular. Um, and that's, I think a lot of it, Jay, becomes, first of all, with the way that we hunt out in West. And I think it a lot has to do with the fact that we actually have a little history with the 15 power binocular and Swarovski, and certainly a little history with the new Zeiss Conquest 15. So we get that question absolutely, undoubtedly the most about the 15s.
Do you think that's also a function of most people that are calling probably have some sort of 8 or 10 power binocular, and that's kind of been the standard for many, many years as people having, just the go-to, standby binocular and or do you feel like they already have 15s and they're calling you about upgrading 15s?
It's funny because with Swarovski's, new 15 that they came out, and then, over the last couple of years, I mean, I think there's two calls we get. We get the guys that are upgrading to the brand new ones, and then we get guys that are upgrading, from, one brand, and now they want to buy anybody and everybody's older 15 from Swarovski. So it's been really kind of fun to have that. It's fun to watch people kind of progress in their grade of glass that they buy. But I think to answer, the question about the 8s and 10s, almost everybody out west kind of starts with a 10 by 42. That's kind of the go-to glass. You have a few guys. I mean, like myself, I wear an 8 by 42 most of the time, or an 8 by 30 on my neck. Um, the back east guys are, they're fairly commonly, they're fairly common that they have a set of 8s. And mainly because of terrain, and they want a wider field of view. But yeah, it's fun to watch people go through that progression, of adding, tools to the toolbox, so to speak.
Yeah, you mentioned briefly, you mentioned the new Zeiss 15s. How do they compare with the Swarovski 15s as far as size and image
Oh, sure,
quality and
you're gonna come out and you're just gonna hammer me on that. You're just gonna make me say
yeah.
it. I got to tell you, I don't think that there's a better 15 on the market than the Swarovski's 1556. The Zeiss is a very close second, um, and the only reason I think you get a little bit tighter edge to edge clarity, on the Swarovski, the Zeisses do, really superbly when it comes to the center of the ring. But again, you just want to be careful with that because some people aren't just going to go out and spend $2,300 on a pair of 15s from Floral, and you can get the Swarovskis for that 17.99, and so there's always a good trade off there, and
Just so I
so
think
I
I missed
just
you there, are you saying the Zeiss are more expensive or less expensive than the Swarovski
no,
15s?
the Zeiss are less expensive by, I think it's almost $500. So it's a pretty good fair amount, and I'm trying to look at my numbers, but um, with the Swarovski sale, they're 19.99, but you're still you're just a little bit more expensive than the Zeiss. So bottom line is that once you get above that Zeiss Conquest, I mean there's only two pair of glasses to go with. The Leica 1556 with the rangefinder, they do okay. I don't think that there is certainly with the HD glass. I think the Leicas are right there with the Zeiss. But bottom line is, if you want the best 15 on the market, you just got to go with the Swarovski on that one.
Yeah, and then how do the Vortex 15s play? I know that people, everybody's got a different budget, and I know that Vortex sells quite a few of their 15s. Would you say for the money they're just like the next step down as far as optical quality? And I don't want to get you in trouble with all of your manufacturers, but I mean, let's be real
No, I
and
mean,
compare them
look,
for what they
let's be,
are.
but yeah, but let's be real with each other. The Vortex, they're I mean, they are an economical minded. They're a great piece of glass. Um, I mean, I when you start comparing those pieces of glass, Jay, I mean, I'm not afraid to just put it right out there. It's different people have different needs. They have different wallets. They have different, uses and time frames, and when in terms of how much they're going to use it. So, when somebody comes to me and they say, Cody, I want the best piece of glass for the best value, I'm, more than likely they're going to end up purchasing a pair of 1556 Kybaps from Vortex. If somebody wants to upgrade from that, then they start looking at the Zeiss, and then they naturally will look at the Swarovski. So I think that there's a natural progression in those things, and one thing that always needs to be pushed back onto the buyer, Jay, is it's what they think, not what I think. Yes, I get people that ask me every day, Cody, what do you use? And I will tell them what I use. I'll tell them what's in my pack. But it always comes back to what is that person's, needs and wants, and what is their, financial limitations, or maybe they don't have any. And it always comes back to what's best for that customer. And so when we're selling, it always comes back to the three things that I tell people: buy the best glass you can afford, put it on a tripod, and slow down when you're glassing. If you just go back to the first one, buy the best glass you can afford. Some people might be able to afford, but they're never going to use a pair of Swarovskis but once a year. Well, some guy may not want to spend $2,300 like that, and he wants to get the next great next best thing and spend basically almost half the money. I get where that guy's coming from.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of value to the customer. What does it mean to the customer? And I think that's what we do so much at the Outdoorsmans is that when people call us, we're not trying to throw things. I mean, we try to educate people and we try to give people choices and allow them to make the choice that best suits their needs.
Yeah, I mean,
I,
how
I
often
don't.
do customers come in with and get every pair of 15s that you have and go out in the parking lot and look through the Kaibabs and look through the Swarovskis and look through the
Well,
Leicas and look through the Zeiss.
that's an everyday occurrence.
Yeah.
We will set glasses up on a tripod for people and take them out back and look at the mountains. And, we got hikers out there every day. And especially now with the weather being as beautiful as it is, we can literally put glass on a tripod, show you out back, and literally, you can see the differences in the glasses yourself and make the choice that what is best for you.
Sure. Well, that's good stuff right there. I want to talk to you today about Coues deer hunting, specifically with these December hunts coming up. This year, the season dates are the 9th through the 31st. And I want to talk to you. I know you've been on a bunch of December hunts and want to kind of get your take on the changes that these deer go through from a behavioral standpoint. I want to go through some of the changes you go through as
Sure.
far as where you're looking, maybe your duration, time frame where you're looking throughout the day, how things change. Not only that, throughout this season, one thing I think that's so interesting about this, 9th through the 31st season is, you get virtually no rut at the beginning. Towards the end of the hunt, you could have full-blown rut. And so there's a 2-3 week period there where a lot happens. But before we get to that, let's take a quick break. GoHunt.com Insider is by far the most valuable tool a Western hunter could give themselves. GoHunt.com Insider are the industry leaders and number one source for Western hunting for a lot of reasons. GoHunt.com Insider have changed the game for how hunts and hunting information are found. Within a matter of minutes using Filtering 2.0, you'll be able to filter by state, species, residency, odds of drawing a tag, specific hunting dates, and harvest success percentages to find the hunts that fit exactly what you're looking for. If you are a guy that applies across the West or just in your home state but want to find some new opportunity, there's no better way to do it than using GoHunt.com Insider. As an exclusive offer to my listeners, if you sign up for a GoHunt.com Insider membership for $149 a year and use the promo code JScott at checkout, you'll receive a $50 Coues gift card. Head on over to GoHunt.com/insider and get yourself the most valuable membership a hunter could have. I have known the owners of the Outdoorsmans in Phoenix for over 20 years. They are the authority on optics and hunting gear. Outdoorsmans is the leading designer and manufacturer of high-quality tripods, mounting accessories, and pack systems for all hunters. Their customer service is the best in the business. Go to outdoorsmans.com or call 1-800-291-8065 and use the J. Scott promo code to receive 10% off any products. So Cody, these Coues deer that we've been hunting for many years, I get a lot of questions, people listening to the podcast, and I get a lot of questions in. And I thought you would be a great person to have, being an Arizona resident and native here, and someone that has hunted these deer and is very passionate about it. The December, what's known as the rut season is pretty cool because for one, the temperature compared to the October and the November and even the late November, early December seasons, typically you've got a lot cooler weather. Whereas in October, on several of these last podcasts, we've been talking about, real warm temperatures, what these deer are doing, and we're going to dive into a bunch of the details of the hunt, but what is your general consensus of these December quote-unquote rut hunts for Coues deer?
Well, Jay, I guess, I've been hunting whitetail. I think I've had 2 mule deer tags since 1987. So I guess you could say I've been hunting, whitetail more than anything for the longest. And I can tell you that of those times, the majority of those tags that I've drawn and the majority of the tags that I always put in for a forced choice are always the December hunts. And I think that, a lot of people get, oh, it's a rut hunt, and they get really excited about that. And I will tell you that, yes, it can be a rut hunt, but I hunt the late hunt because it's my favorite time of year to be out. I love cold mornings. I love, the mild weather during the day, and I love, the cold evenings. The deer seem, well, they don't seem to be, they're just more active at that time. And I just think it's the most beautiful time to be out in Arizona. I love the fact that it can snow. I love the weather at that time of year. I mean, to me, it's just the best time to be out, and the season is the longest. But
Yep.
I think, in Jay, as you well know, I'm not saying that you would never see rut activity in the earlier part of a December whitetail hunt. I'm just saying, don't get your hopes up too high,
Right. I mean,
because
Cody,
it's just
yeah, I mean, I sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I mean, you
no,
hear
no,
it,
no, no,
you
no.
hear
You're
people talk about the rut hunt, and they get all worked up and all fired up, and they wait all year, and they prep and scout and do all the thing, and then they go the first 3 days, and they're like, "Where's the rut? This sucks." And I'd like to say, like I think you were alluding to till I interrupted you, don't get too high, don't get too low, just kind of take it for what it is. It's fairly rare to see quite a bit of rutting activity early, but the closer you get to Christmas and the further after Christmas you get, the more chance you're going to have bucks chasing does, and get a lot of that real pre-rut activity.
well,
And depending on where you hunt, if you're in some of the central Arizona units, I mean, if in my mind it has to do with cold weather. If you have nice crisp cold weather after Christmas, central Arizona units, you could see full on chasing bucks, nose to the
absolutely.
ground, does running, snorting, the full chase and rut that you hear about. I think that could absolutely happen. I've seen it happen. But as you say, this season starts on the 9th and goes through the 31st. It's the longest Coues deer season other than the January archery season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's the longest season we have. And so one of the
Well,
benefits of the season not only is cooler weather and potential rutting, pre-rutting, but you get a long period of time to do it. So it's a pretty.
absolutely. Well, and Jay, one of the things that probably needs to be said is that, look, when most people talk about and they start hunting the December hunt, I would give you a number. I don't know what the number is. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a high percentage. It's the people that are trying to hunt that hunt. They're doing so because they want to kill an older age class buck. Okay. And the thing of it is that you might see the little bucks, and I'm talking like little forks or little 2-point, whatever they are. You might see them rubbing a bush. You might see them, like fighting each other or just kind of sparring a little bit. You might even see them trailing a doe pretty hard. But some, it's that's just merely interesting. When it really gets going, you will know. And I just think that people just need to understand that I think some people get so carried away with the rut, and it's going to be like this. Oh my God, the big bucks are going to come flying out of the timber, and or wherever they're coming out of. I just kind of want to tell everybody that's really not the way it's going to happen until you see it happen,
Right.
and it's normally when if people really want to hunt a rifle tag and they want to hunt Coues deer in the late season and you want to see the rut, your best chances of seeing the rut are basically the last 5 or 6 days, like from Christmas on to the 31st.
Yeah, and if you look at these December let's call them the December rut Coues deer hunts. For non-residents, most of these are taken, and maybe some of the units, maybe 7 points up, to 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe even 12 points without, looking at the numbers in front of me. So for non-residents, it could take a little while for guys to draw those tags, as well as residents. Most of the tags, like Unit 22, I think there's 50. Unit 23, I think there's 85. 21, I want to say there's 40. 6A, I want to say there's like 40 or 50.
It's 40 or 50.
You go down south and normally units, 34A and 36C and 35A and B, I mean, where you've got 500-600 tags per hunt October, per hunt November, per hunt early or late November. So those 3 hunts, and then all of a sudden you've got the December hunt, and there's anywhere from 25 to maybe up to 100 December tags. So you have a much lower tag number. I think that's one thing that makes these hunts so good, as well as the other things we talked about. Specifically this year, when I look at the dates starting December 9th, that basically gives you the weekend. If you're just hunting weekends, you get 4 weekends. You get the 9th, 10th, and 11th. You get the 16th, 17th, and 18th. You get the 23rd, 24th, 25th. Granted, 25th on a Sunday, if you miss Christmas Day, a lot of guys would, get in trouble. But then even the last weekend, you've got, Friday and Saturday. The hunt ends on a Saturday, the 31st. And, that's pretty cool that you can get 4 weekends, not to mention if you're taking any time off during the week. I try and tell people that in my mind, this hunt starts on Christmas Day. And if you only had, 6 days, I would do everything you got to do Christmas Day, and then I would be driving out of town planning to hunt 26, 27, 28, 29, 30th, and 31st, and you're going to get the best 6 days of that hunt. That's not to say that every year routinely, big bucks get shot early, because they do. But I get asked all the time, well, what days would you hunt? Well, when I look specifically at this year, the moon is going to be full on the 13th. So it starts on the 9th and it goes full on the 13th. One of the interesting things, and I don't want to act like I know what I'm talking about. I'm looking here at Google. Is the 16th, December 13th is going to be a supermoon. So if I read this here, a supermoon happens when a full moon or new moon coincides with the moon's closest approach to the Earth, also called perigee. A super full moon looks 12 to 14% bigger than its counterpart, the micromoon. The next supermoon is December 16th, December 2016. This says December 14th is the full moon. The next, let's see here. The next time a full moon is even closer to the Earth is going to be 2024. And the last time that it was this close was January 26, 1948. And so what I'm telling you, looking at this chart, is this moon is going to be 14% bigger than a normal full moon. So by telling you that, Cody, what does that tell you?
Well, what tells me is like, for me to just judge the best part of the hunt, it's going to be the second half of the hunt.
Why?
If I just had to make a gut call, because, on a full moon, the deer typically are up moving around at night. It also depends on the temperatures and how cold it is. But, the fact of it is that, you see typically less deer movement on full moons, in the morning. You might see them moving around middle of the day, but, the morning hunts are not going to be as productive. And almost always are never as productive on full moons.
I agree.
Now, I'm not
I
talking
agree.
about Virginia whitetails. I'm talking Coues deer in the state of Arizona, New Mexico, and I've never been to Mexico, but the fact of it is that all that activity seems to coincide with each other.
I
So with a
couldn't
full
agree
moon,
more.
yeah, I think it's the only thing that's good out of that full moon is if for some reason you forgot your flashlight, headlamp, or your batteries run low, you're probably not going to have a problem walking around at night. That's a fact.
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is this. It is what it is. So if you have a December Coues deer hunt coming up, maybe you look at your schedule and maybe your better half is giving you pressure for this, that, and the other for the holidays. And you're going to have to choose your time. Maybe you're not fortunate enough to be able to say, I'm taking the entire hunt and hunting every day. So maybe you say, maybe the first weekend, if I was gonna bag and do some honeydews, maybe you look at those first part of the dates and say maybe you miss opening weekend. It starts on the 9th, and maybe you decide that it's full moon, so you'll have really bright conditions. The 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. Maybe
Correct.
you try and go in on the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, then come back for Christmas and hit it hard, the last part of the hunt. One thing I will say is I totally agree with you about full moon conditions and Coues deer. Coues deer, in my mind, they're up, they're feeding. Uh, they don't need, or they can get what they need at night. And so for usually the first couple of hours in the morning on a full moon, or even a bright moon, and I'm not even talking about a super moon, the first couple hours you're not going to see a lot of deer. One thing I will tell you is if
Right.
Cody, you weigh in, if you're gonna go on the opening weekend this year and hunt that ninth, 9th through the 13th, and right during that brightest time, you know, it would never happen, but you could literally show up there at 9 or 10 o'clock and plan on glassing from like 11 to 2, and honestly probably see more deer from 11 to 2 in those times than those first couple hours. And I mean, if you live here in Phoenix or in Tucson, or you live place where you've got a couple, an hour and a half commute to your unit, you could potentially wake up with the family, get the kids off to school, do whatever, and run up and be there by 10 o'clock in the morning and hunt, 3 hour, 4 hours in the day, and probably have just as good a if you went the whole time.
Jay, I would tell you that's absolutely true. It's happened to me several times, and it's just kind of one of those things that when you get a full moon and you have lost movement during the day, um, I mean, even if you're going to be there at first light and stay all day, I just have always kind of told people that is a full day glass right there, because you're almost probably going to get a little frustrated in the morning, but give it time and be patient because those deer got to get up and move around at some point, and they will, and especially if it's cold enough or, they got a storm coming on or something, they'll get up and start moving around, but they'll start moving around, in the middle part of the day. And I have found those times to be very productive like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would even go as far as saying, um, you know, this all, if we got a serious cold snap, okay, that first weekend where we got, bitter cold snap, you turn on the news and it's way colder than normal. You're looking at, 15, 18, 20 degrees in the morning, highs, 45 during the day. I would say that the
Yep.
cold temperature could equal out or even negate the full moon. If you have cloudy
Good.
conditions, if you have clear and crisp, as long as it's really, really cold, I could potentially see those deer, because Coues deer have such thin skin. They could decide to lay up all night, even though it's bright, it's super cold. They may jump up when the sun comes up. So,
Yep.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I would say to watch out for that, wouldn't you?
It would be preferable, and one of the caveats and one of the things that people should be really kind of understanding is that if you do have limited time during that late hunt, do not pigeonhole yourself so bad, because if you think that the only time that you're going to get is, let's just say it's the last uh, uh, the last 5 days or 6 days of the hunt, and you have the opportunity to hunt like the first weekend and maybe the middle weekend, go hunt those the best you can. But what happens is I've had this happen to myself, and I've had it happen to good friends. Is they think, oh, I'm not even going to go out until the last part of the hunt, and then Arizona gets hammered with one of those giant weather storms that we do, and the rim country or the north country gets hammered with snow, and it locks down the roads, and it can absolutely put a death grip on your hunt, to where you can't, Arizona has a tendency to want to shut highways down pretty quick, and it will happen. So I just always tell people, hunt as much and as often you can during that hunt, but don't pigeonhole yourself so bad that you can, that is the only time you can hunt is the late hunt. But it's a crapshoot, but that's hunting, and that's Mother Nature, and it's unfortunate sometimes, but you just got to go with, what God lays out there, and make it work and have some fun, and get after it is really what it comes down to.
For sure. Let's take a quick break. After that, I want to talk to you about some of the tactics you use on these December hunts. PhoneScope is a company that makes custom-molded, precisely engineered smartphone digiscoping adapters. Photographing wildlife has never been easier. It is simple to text photos and videos from your smartphone and share them with your friends. PhoneScope stands behind their product with a 100% money-back guarantee. Get yours now by using the JScott16 promo code and receive 10% discount on all purchases. Check them out at PhoneScope, that's PhoneSkope.com, or on Instagram at PhoneScope. Real game calls featuring the elk reel. Real Game Calls makes innovative, realistic, and easy-to-master calls using their proprietary, revolutionary design. They are located and manufactured in Gypsum, Colorado. Their calls were designed and battle-tested on some of the hardest hunted terrain on Earth. Check out elkreel.com. Use the promo code JScott and receive a 20% discount on all purchases. Go to www.elkreel.com. So, Cody, one of the things I wanted to point out before we get on to tactics you use kind of during these ruddy hunts is if you look at, we're talking about moon phase, and if you look at when the new moon, or what I call, the dark moon, it will be dark on the 29th of December. So those days after Christmas, 26th is, just barely a sliver, 27th, barely a sliver, 28th, just a smidge of a sliver, 29th, completely dark moon, and then, 30th, it's, those dates, I'm predicting after Christmas, some big bucks this year are going to get hammered. And I'm predicting that the reports are going to come in that those last 5, even 6 days of the hunt this year are going to be epic. That's my prediction. Now, one thing that can just slow that down is if we all of a sudden got warm temps and people are down here at Christmas in their shorts and shirts. that could totally wipe that out. But if we have normal or below normal temperatures added with that dark moon after Christmas, I think it could be unreal.
Well, Jay, there's nothing, as a Phoenix, Scottsdale resident, there is nothing more exciting for me that when I see that there's no moon and I see freeze warning temperatures in the city of Phoenix. Because when I see those, it kind of, and you get a little weather going, to me it's like the perfect storm, and I literally start scratching at the door like a dog trying to get in. I literally am trying to get out of the house, and I want to get up north
Yeah,
because those I just
when Caribe Divine
when we get
starts talking about covering your plants, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh, I hope
it,
they all die." You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
I could not agree more. But it really is kind of funny how it all comes together like that, and it's just that all that weather, the moon, it all plays a factor. I think the truth of it is that if you have a doe that comes into estrus for some reason, in the early part of the hunt, you're gonna have bucks on it. Now you might not have the biggest bucks in the area, or just because a lot of those bigger bucks will start moving around, and they'll start covering bigger distances, finding does, and that's generally speaking, that's what we've been talking about. But we see more activity. Bucks start to get on a little bit bigger loops and patterns that they make, and it's because they're looking for does that are that are in estrus. They're looking for does that are ready to breed.
Cody, let's talk about that timing progression of the rut a little bit and bounce a few ideas off each other. What I normally see is as that December hunt rolls on, you see little bucks spikes and little 2 points kind of chasing and with the does and kind of nosing the does, and then you may be glassing hillsides, and all of a sudden you see a nice kind of medium maturity, the next step up buck, and they're kind of raking their antlers on a bush and maybe sparring, 75, 80-inch bucks kind of sparring with each other. And then all of a sudden you may glass over and here's a fully mature, 95, 100, 105-inch deer, and they may be just walking. Talk to me about the
Yeah.
walk.
Oh, there's a. Are we talking about the nose to the ground, like I'm looking for something to walk?
Well, I think there's the nose to the ground sniffing it out walk, which comes a little bit later. But then there's also just
Yeah.
the walk, and they never stop, and there's kind of sniffing, and they're just going, going,
Well,
going, and then
yeah.
gone.
There's a definitive kind of a gait. There's two kinds of. There's the gait where they're just kind of on a continual search, and you can watch them go from one side of your field of view to the other, and they may never even stop. And then there's that gait where their nose to the ground, and it's more of like a trot. And you see both of those, but in that early part of the season, yeah, if you find a big old buck and he's moving from one side to the other, and he literally is not stopping. It is interesting because I've watched him walk 2 or 3 ridges.
Cody, talking about tactics in that exact, let's say you glass up a nice 100-inch buck and he's just covering across a hillside and he's got that walk, not the nose to the ground walk, but kind of the sniffing, but just continuous walking. And it's not the nose to the ground like he's pretty dang close to a doe. It's more like he's on a trail and he smells it, but he's a long ways behind her.
Right.
Do you tend to want to get up and move, or do you tend to want to stay exactly where you are? Because you may
No.
miss him on one ridge, but you're going to catch him if you can extrapolate out. All of a sudden, he's on that
Yeah.
same line 3 ridges over.
Yeah, Jay. I guess there's times to be aggressive and times not to. But if I find a buck that's moving like that, generally speaking, we are going to stay put and we're going to watch him as long as we can watch him until we have, the best idea that we can, formulate that deer, either we watched him bed down and he's in a spot, or we know that that's where he went and that's where he beds down at. So, generally speaking, we are not just going to go flying out that deer. I guess if the terrain is right and you feel like you can get around on a different ridge and look back into where he's at, you've got to make those calls at that moment in time. But generally speaking, you're going to watch him and you're going to stay with him for as long as possible and try to bed him down. And as soon as he beds down, and Jay, I know you guys do a lot of this as well as we, and Cody and I, and you leapfrog. You keep a pair of eyes on him, and the guy moves. And then when that guy picks him up and stays on him, we leapfrog the other guy over to him, or it just depends on what the circumstance is, but generally speaking, we're staying on him until he beds down or we got a real good idea where he's at.
Yeah, and I think that the rut walk, as we call it, I think one of the challenges is they're just covering country. There's two things. I'm kind of putting it in the back of my mind that, okay, there's a good buck around in this area, and as this season progresses, he is a buck that I'm expecting will show back up in these couple of ridges here, and this is kind of the terrain that he works. And as well as if you see a buck on a walk and he's just covering country, one of the challenges is you may never catch up with that deer again. So if you can leapfrog like what you're saying, Cody, uh, or if you could, make your way over where the last place you saw him, the best chance you have is potentially if he beds after walking 3 or 4 ridges. Sometimes they'll bed. One of the challenges, and curious what your thoughts are, when they're in that rut walk, phase, they bed, but it seems like they only bed for like 30, 40 minutes, an hour. Obviously if it's super hot and he's walking, 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 and it's going to be hot that afternoon, you probably have a good chance that he's going to bed and stay there. But let's say it's crisp, it's cloudy, it's a cold front, and he's just on a walk. A lot of times they'll bed for 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour, and then boom, they're up and walking again. So
Correct.
it becomes a challenge. If I know that it's going to get real warm, I'm going to go to the last place that I saw the buck and hope that he holds up in that canyon. I'm going to be glassing probably in the shade. I'm going to be glassing on the thick side of the hill, hoping that I can find him. If it's cold and, a moving day, so to speak, I'm going to try and get someone over on that deer as quickly as possible and know that you may never see that deer again until he shows up a week later, actually locked on does. Um,
Well, and see, that's what I was going to say too, because you also have that other option, Jay. And I know we've both seen this, but you see that buck go by you, and maybe this is your favorite glassing spot, and literally you might sit in that same place for 1, 2, maybe 3 days, and literally, I mean, I've seen it where all of a sudden, well, here comes the deer back, going back across, or maybe he's come in a different direction, but he's just, he's whatever he's doing, he's making that full loop. And I've seen it a number of times where, you see the same buck and he's just kind of doing the same. Maybe that's not the same trail. Maybe it's the same ridge, but a little lower or higher, or, just depending on what he's doing. But, you have that option too. A lot of guys, they know because they've spent so much time in a certain place. If I stay right here, and especially during the rut time, that deer, as long as he doesn't get shot by somebody else or pushed or moved or whatever, he'll make his rounds again. He'll come back through.
yeah, he's just out checking around.
Yeah, he's just out checking, and now it's a guesswork of, well, am I going to catch him in the next? Is that a day? Is that 2 days? Is that every I don't know, and that's where the hunting gets really interesting, because during the rut, at a certain time, those deer can do anything they want to do.
Talk to me about the does. In my mind, on these December hunts and the later that the hunt gets, and,
Gotta hunt them.
as this hunt progresses, are you hunting areas that are more doe infested? Tell me the transition of the hunt as far as where you're choosing to hunt, how that changes from the beginning of the hunt to the end of the hunt. So say the first week compared to the last week.
Well, I mean, it goes without saying that the hotter and the closer you get to that magic time of the rut, the more that you're hunting the does. And I mean, when you're finding a group of does, or maybe you got a ridge that maybe has 2 does here and 3 here and 4 over here, or whatever the case may be, I'm going to center all my effort on staying with the does, because inevitably the bucks are coming to the does. I mean, I've seen it too much. I've had too much, good luck with it. And I think that, from the beginning to the end, all of a sudden you can have two or three does in a spot, and you can watch two or three different bucks come into the same pocket. So, whereas if you watch those does in the beginning of the hunt, you might have little bucks around, but, we've actually seen it where, by the end of the hunt, you take those same does that are on the same hillside every day, and you can have 3-4 bucks to, come into a place.
That's what I love about the rut is watching those does, from the beginning of the hunt, even scouting, this year it starts on the 9th, and you do all your scouting and you see doe, and you think, gosh, I just love to see some bucks. But if you can get to know your doe groups, get to know their patterns, get to know where they kind of like to feed, get to know kind of what they do towards the end of the hunt, like you said, when that switch flips and it's on, you'll have a buck with every single doe. I mean, not each doe per se, but each doe group will have a buck of some sort with them. It's very rare to see does in that after Christmas time frame that don't have a buck with them.
Yeah, it may be, and sometimes it may be a little spike or a 2-point, or it may be a big old giant that you've been looking for. But inevitably, there will be a buck with those doves.
Cody, as this season, let's talk about now the after Christmas, when you're anticipating, let's say everything works perfectly, cold front, Caribe Divine's got her coat on. I'm here reporting from the patio, and snow's on the way, and freeze warnings, and those typical winter storms, and you're just jumping for joy. Let's say that's rolling in. It's and let's say that hits, say on Christmas, and then the next 6 days are just cold and crisp. So we've got cold and crisp, we've got dark moon. I mean, if everything, that's perfect alignment of everything for, maximum what I would call rutting activity at the end of the December hunt. Granted, I think most of the rutting takes place, in January, but cold, a dark moon after Christmas is as good as you can get with this December tag. How do you see the deer reacting, and how would your morning setup be? What would you be expecting to look for? What are positives? What are negatives? That you see as far as, this is happening, that, we need to change, or, yep, I'm sitting in the right spot because I'm seeing, X, Y, or Z.
I think, when it gets cold like that, and the first thing, and I'm saying, the weather is good and we got sun and it's not storming per se. I think one of the big things to keep in mind at that time of year is the deer, and what I've found pretty, even when we've killed a couple of big bucks, during that late season, the deer are very, they want that sun. And a lot of times I might not see a whole lot of movement before the sun is up. But when that sun hits the top of the mountain and you start working your way down with your glasses, I can't tell you how many times that we've, sat there and just counted the deer as the sun crept its way down the mountain. And, the deer just stand up, and they literally, it's almost like they're basking in the sun just for that first couple, 2, 3, 4 minutes, just to kind of get the blood warm and, going through their body. So I use the sun to my advantage, the sun at my back for the most part. And, a lot of times if obviously if there's a group of does, or, you might see a whole, 3, 4, group of deer stand up together, and, it's kind of like the start of their day. I mean, I've seen that a lot. But at that time of year, Jay, I really do truly believe that, if you get good cold weather like that, and it's not quote unquote in a storm, you might see a lot of activity if a storm's coming. and they know it, and they're out feeding and moving, and because they sense it more than you do, that something big's coming, and they need to start eating and storing energy or whatever it is that their natural instincts tell them. But man, I use the sun a lot for that. And sometimes they won't even bed up on the north sides in the shade. They'll if it's cold enough, they'll bed right out in the middle of the sun, as plain as day. And so it really, in terms of your glassing, I get super aggressive and try to be looking around at all different places and try to catch as much of that sunrise as I can. And then if you got deer that are moving, I mean, a lot of times they might bed up by 9 or whatever in the morning, but if you got a good rutting pocket, God, that might go clear into the, into 10, 11 in the morning. I've seen it go.
I want to clarify something you said and make sure that I understand you correctly and the listeners understand you correctly. With the conditions that we're talking about after Christmas, cold, not a storm, just bluebird, but crisp cold, frost on the ground, you're following the sun line and you're glassing fast or slow for the first hour.
Well, okay, so you only get one sunrise.
What do you mean by that?
And well, I mean, you only get one sunrise in the morning. So when you start to see that light hit the mountain, I'm trying to cover as much of that sunlight as possible because, and Jay, I'll say it, the deer just stand out like sore thumbs sometimes. It's almost like they glow. And when they stand up and everything hits them, they stand up and you can just see them really, really well. The light in the morning, the heat waves are down. I mean, it's just like a perfect scenario to be glassing aggressively back and forth across that sun line. Where the sun's going down, the sun's coming up, but the shadow line is disappearing, going down the mountain. And I just think that's the greatest time to be really super aggressive with following that line back and forth. And, it depends on who you're with and how many guys you got. But, if everybody's got a piece of country, man, I've seen it in the morning where you got, 10, 15, 20 deer, in the first 15 minutes. And then, then the work starts because now you got to keep track of them all.
Yeah, I heard you say something and I want to hit on it. I noticed you didn't say up and down. I noticed you said side to side. And I know you and I have talked about this before, but I'd like you to drive that point home of you're sitting behind your tripod, your binoculars are mounted, and you're glassing side to side. I'm picturing that sun line hitting the highest point of the mountain, and then as the sun rises, obviously that line tends to come down like you're saying. But I didn't hear you say you're glassing up and down. I hear you saying side to side. Why?
Yeah, well, it's just because that's your widest. The sun line is left to right more than it is up and down at that moment in time. And I'm going to be going down. I'm just going down at the rate that the sun is going.
So in other words, you're following that line and everything above that line, meaning you're not looking below the line in the shade, so to speak. You're looking anything that's in the sun or on the sun line. Back and forth,
correct.
back and forth, back and forth, like You're almost sweeping it as the sun sweeps down the actual mountain. You're starting at the top where the most sun is, and you're sweeping back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, following that all the way down. Then, like you said, a lot of times, you're spotting a deer here, but you're still following that. Very rarely will you just all of a sudden stop and just lock in on deer, right? You'll be constantly checking those two does and that small buck as you're sweeping down the mountain.
Yeah, Jay, I almost always inevitably let the terrain dictate whether I'm going left to right or up and down. But in the instance that the sun is crawling its way, down the mountain, or the shadow line is receding, so to speak, or going down the mountain, it offers you typically a very good horizon, so to speak, and and you've got a very, good span left and right that you can glass, I almost always will glass, left to right, side to side, just because it allows you some freedom, and that panning motion is typically always smoother and makes for a better transition. And over the years you just kind of develop the fact that you find a lot of deer that way, so I keep doing it.
When you're doing that pan, and we're talking after Christmas, we're talking ideal conditions, there's something that a deer, and I'm talking about a doe, that you see, and it could be a buck, but you're panning, panning, panning. What, other than a deer's rack and the size of the rack, what kind of movement could they do that will make your heart jump? And you know exactly when you see them do this, you know what it means.
Well, the biggest thing is that, um, if I see a deer moving and their posture, their head is way low, and they get kind of a gait to them. If it's that dark, or let's say it's in the sun, almost inevitably you know right away that that's a buck.
And
And
or
I
a
just
doe, a buck chasing a doe. So in other words, if you see trotting, if you see that
right.
trot or that run, don't you instantly just smile inside, and all of a sudden you're like
Oh
10
yeah.
degrees warmer
Well,
just by seeing
and
that?
and and the other one is, Jay, is that when you see, kind of like, if you've got I want to say a clump of trees or bushes, and you kind of see a doe get kind of blown out of it, and you see her kind of jump out of it, and she runs about 15 yards and stops. It's almost like you're just expecting a buck to come up right behind her. And I would tell you that, most of the time it's absolutely true that a buck is coming.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's nothing like watching a doe trot out from a bush like a squirt, just squirts out from a bush, and you're just
Yep.
glued to that bush because you know a buck's going to come right out of there. And so I would tell the guys out there listening, if this is your first December hunt and you're hunting after Christmas, focus on the does. Focus on, like Cody's talking about, first thing in the morning, following that shade line down. Don't get caught up in one spot. Keep moving and be looking for that movement. Looking for, don't miss deer that are just standing there. But if you see some deer trotting, if you see a deer with his nose to the ground and it's still too dark to see antlers, it's inevitably a buck. So either keep your eye on that if it looks like a big body, or make sure you check back with it as you're making your sweep down the mountain, because that is a buck. If you see him trotting, nose to the ground, that's a great sign that it's a buck.
Yeah, there's just a certain posture that they get. And, you can almost say the same thing for, when a buck comes in and he kind of gets to a spot where he stops, and there's just kind of this posture and this pose they get when they maybe not see a doe out in front of them, but they can, either they've smelled them or they've come into a clearing. They just kind of get this, big, I don't know, just a barrel chested, like, stiff neck and cocked head, and the ears are forward. You can just kind of tell it, that's a buck standing right there. And sure enough, when you make it out and the light gets better and everything comes together, you're like, you know what? That was a buck standing right there. And it's the best time of the year. It is the most exciting. It's my favorite time to be out, period.
Yeah, for sure. Cody, let's say you're looking at, 7, 8, 900 yards away, and it's pretty low light. No, let's actually back up. 7, 800, 700 to 1,000 yards away, and it's in the morning. It's going from low light kind of to good glassing light. In your mind, how big does a buck have to be? How big do his antlers have to be for it to be a 100-inch buck looking through 15 power binoculars? I'm trying to get
You
a
know,
sense for those people that maybe haven't seen those bucks. And if you're looking
I
at 6 or 8 bucks, you don't want to waste your time getting the spotting scope out on a dink. What is like the general rule of thumb of like, what are you looking for to go, that's a good buck?
I'm looking for width of the ears, and certainly I'd like to see that that distance at least. If you were going to divide that distance between the ears in half, that half that distance tall. That's kind of my bracketing. That's my box look.
Yeah,
I
and
want
so
width
in
of
other
the
words,
ears.
if it's like a 100-inch buck, you're going to be able to tell that it has antlers on its head, and you're going to be able to see like in my mind, like anything under 100, you can't really see much. But when it's like a
Well, yeah.
hundred
I
or
mean,
better, it's like boom, you can instantly see like full
exactly.
frame. It's like a whole nother buck. It's like a whole nother
That's
story.
that's exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good
Yeah.
rule of thumb.
I always, I take the ears with the width, and if I divide that in half, I take that distance, and if he's that tall above his ears, half that distance, then I just know that that's a good boxy frame.
Yeah. And I think, you've got to have that mass too to have a mature deer. And I know that a lot of deer, you can just tell right away that you don't even need to put your spotting scope on them because they're lacking mass, they're thin. But when you see a mature deer that's, got solid mass, and we're talking, like, you know, 15, 16 inches of mass, it's like a whole nother story. You see like chocolate,
Yeah,
their antlers are almost chocolate and it's just like a solid solid mass there. A lot of times maybe you can't tell, is it a 3 point or a 4x4 or what is it? But I look for that boxy frame, above the ears, but you can where pretty much at any distance with 15s, if you see a solid mass of antler, it's a pretty good buck. And that's usually what
yeah.
I'd use.
Unless you're trying to kill something specific and you're a number chaser or whatever, and typically the number is always shooting something over or under 100, right? I tell you, like, if you see that box and you see that heavy mass, and certainly you see something bigger than that box, just figure out how to shoot it and go ground check it later, because I guarantee you're going to be happy with it.
Yeah. What
And I
kind
don't
of
know how you couldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of tip could you give guys on those cold mornings? You're leaving either your backpacking tent or you're leaving your truck to go hike to your glassing knob and it's a real cold morning. What do you do with your binoculars that you're going to be glassing with?
My binoculars I'm glassing with. Um, a lot of times I'll put them on my chest or keep them close to my chest inside my jacket. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I get to where I'm going, if they're as warm as my face is, it'll keep them from fogging up. So that's always a real good tip. If not, that's to keep stuff from fogging up. I almost always take my hat off and put it on backwards. Or a lot of people they breathe into where they're in their glass, and the heat gets caught underneath their the brim of their hat, and they don't realize, but they're actually causing their binoculars to fog up.
Right. So you want your binoculars to be more like your body temp, less like the outside air temp. If you were to
Uh,
hike up to and sweating and the whole thing and your binos are in your pack and you get up there and it's real crisp and cold and you put your warm face up to a cold binocular,
yeah,
immediately it fogs up.
they'll fog up almost instantaneously.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's absolutely correct, Jay.
Well, Cody, it's been a great episode. I know you've got to get going. Are you going to be out this December looking for coups?
Yeah, we're the first weekend we're going to be hunting with Patrick Scroggin of the Sheep Shape TV show. Eddie Corona was able to put a hunt together with Patrick, for Wounded Warriors and Outdoors, and It's going to be a really cool deal to get a chance. I've met Patrick on several occasions, and he's just a super good guy, and I can't wait to get out and hunt with him. And he's never hunted Coues deer before, so he's very excited. And we're going to get to hunt because of his work schedule. He's only got 2 weekends that he hunts. It's the first and second weekend, and that's all he's got. So we're going to do the best we can to hook him up with a good representative head.
That's awesome. Dar and I, well, I've got the December sheep season up in 15D. I've got a hunter from Texas, and then we actually leave for Mexico this year. We're going to do December 27th through January 4th. Part of that new moon on the 29th, we felt like, take a gamble a little bit. We've got a couple young guys that are Christmas break. It works good with their schedule. So the 27th through the 4th of January, we'll probably catch some pre-rut activity. The further south you go, it seems like they rut a little bit later, but I'm just hoping for one of those after Christmas, big storms that come in, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 days of just bluebird cold, and just and then we'll have our hunts in January. But the season's upon us, bud. I appreciate you spending time with us talking about Coues deer hunting in December, and it's always
absolutely
great talking to you. What's going on at the Outdoorsman's? I want to give you a chance to leave the listeners with a way to get a hold of you, and anything special going on there.
Jay, the biggest thing we got going on right now is the sale from Swarovski going through the end of the year. And I would just tell people that if they're interested in talking to us about that, I'll give us a call. We'll work you through, rangefinder scopes, and any of the binoculars that you're looking for. And then of course we've got all our tripod setups and backpacks. We just had our Pack Friday sale. But give us a call and let us help you out with your next hunt. And that's it's just always a good opportunity to be on the show. They can always look at our website at outdoorsmans.com, or you can call us at the shop at 1-800-291-8065, and we'll be happy to talk to you guys and help you out in any way we can.
That's awesome, buddy. It was great having you on. Appreciate the Outdoorsman sponsorship of the podcast, and look forward to finishing those last couple months of the season strong, and then we'll see a show season. And what shows, do you know definitively what shows you're going to be at, so the listeners can make sure to come and look you up?
Yeah, Jay, we're going to be at the Sheep Show this year, which is roughly about about 19th through the 22nd of the month. I don't quote me on the dates right now, but it's
19th to
and
the
then
21st, I think, of January.
Yep. And then we have a week off, and then we go to Las Vegas for the Safari Club International show. That's kind of the granddaddy of them all. And then we have another week off, and we'll be at Salt Lake City for the Western Hunter Conservation Expo, which is always a real good fun time, and lots of people there. So people, if they're in those regions or areas, you'll have 3 chances to get a hold of us and see us. So it'll be a fun time and a really good place to be.
Awesome, buddy. Well, have fun on your hunt, and thanks again, and God bless you, and have a happy holidays if I don't see you before then.
Absolutely, Jay. Thank you again for the opportunity. It's always good, brother.
All right, take care. Guys, thanks for listening to this episode with our good friend Cody Nelson at the Outdoorsman's. I want to thank them for their sponsorship of this podcast and remind you that you get a 10% discount when you call and use the J Scott promo code. Cody's always a great wealth of knowledge to talk to, and especially about glassing and Coues deer. He's a great guest to have on. Guys, if you have any questions of me or any comments, you can email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out my website, jscottoutdoors.com. You can also link to my Instagram at jscottoutdoors. Follow along there. On my Facebook page, J Scott Outdoors. I've got my personal Facebook page, J Scott. Just appreciate interacting with you guys, the listeners, and we're right kind of finishing up this year, and we're looking forward to Coues deer seasons and December and January. And Dar and I've got a lot going on. We're going to continue to keep bringing you up to date information here. And just thank you for all your support.